The invitation had arrived 6 weeks ago, embossed with gold lettering. Rachel Chin and Marcus Wellington request your presence at their engagement celebration. I'd almost declined. 3 years of family gatherings where Rachel introduced me as my sister who does freelance work had worn thin. But Mom had called personally, her voice carrying that particular blend of hope and desperation. Please come, Maya. It would mean so much to Rachel. To all of us. So here I was, standing in the marble-floored ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel, wearing a simple black dress from Nordstrom Rack, surrounded by Rachel's wealthy friends in their designer everything. Rachel spotted me immediately. She was radiant in a cream-colored cocktail dress, her engagement ring catching the light, a 3-carat diamond that Marcus had apparently proposed with on a yacht in the Mediterranean. She'd posted 17 Instagram stories about it. Paya. She air-kissed both my cheeks. You made it. I wasn't sure you'd come. Wouldn't miss it, I said. Let me introduce you around. She grabbed my arm and steered me toward a cluster of women holding champagne flutes. Everyone, this is my sister Maya. Maya, these are my sorority sisters from Stanford, Jennifer, Amanda, and Courtney. Nice to meet you, I said. Maya's the artistic one in the family, Rachel explained with that particular tone that made artistic sound like a polite word for unemployed. She does freelance work. Oh, how interesting, Jennifer said in a voice that meant the opposite. What kind of freelance work? Content strategy and consulting, I said simply. So like social media posts? Amanda asked. Something like that. Rachel's fiancé Marcus appeared, drink in hand, looking every bit the investment banker he was. You must be the famous Maya. Rachel's told me so much about you. All good things, I hope. Of course. He smiled, but his eyes were already assessing me. My off-the-rack dress, my practical shoes, my lack of expensive jewelry. I could see him mentally filing me under Rachel's less successful sister. Rachel mentioned you work from home. That must be nice. Very flexible. It has its advantages, I agreed. Marcus just made VP at Goldman Sachs, Rachel interjected proudly. Youngest in his division. Congratulations, I said genuinely. The conversation drifted to Marcus's promotion, then to their wedding plans. A destination ceremony in Tuscany, naturally. I sipped my champagne and smiled at appropriate moments, playing the role I'd perfected over the years. The supportive younger sister who was happy for Rachel's success even if her own life was somewhat directionless. Mom and Dad arrived fashionably late. Dad in his country club blazer, Mom in pearls that probably cost more than my monthly rent. They made their rounds, greeting Rachel's future in-laws with practiced charm. When they reached me, Mom's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Maya, darling. That's a nice dress. Is it new? A few months old, I said. Well, it's lovely. Simple. She patted my arm. How's work? Busy, I said. Still doing the freelance thing? Dad asked, and I could hear the unspoken question. When are you going to get a real job? Still doing that, yes. Rachel reappeared with another group of friends. Everyone, this is Maya. My little sister. She's a freelancer. The word had become my identity in the family lexicon. Not Maya the strategist or Maya the consultant. Just Maya the freelancer. Maya the one who never quite figured it out. What they didn't know, what I'd deliberately never told them, was that my freelance work had evolved considerably over the past 5 years. It had started simply enough. After graduating from Berkeley with a degree in communications, I'd taken a few small consulting gigs while figuring out my next move. Social media strategy for local businesses. Content planning for startups. Small projects that paid the bills while I learned the industry. But then I'd started noticing patterns. The companies that succeeded weren't just posting content randomly. They had sophisticated strategies, data-driven approaches, psychological frameworks for audience engagement. I started developing my own methodology, refining it with each client. Within 2 years, I was working with Series B startups. Within 3, I had Fortune 500 companies on my client roster. By year 4, I'd built a consulting firm. Technically just me and a network of contractors, but we were generating $3.4 million in annual revenue. I'd kept the same apartment in Oakland. Drove the same Honda. Lived simply. And I'd never corrected my family's assumption that I was struggling. It seemed easier than trying to explain to people who'd already decided who I was. So Maya, Marcus's father approached, clearly making polite conversation. Rachel tells me you do social media work. Are you on Instagram? LinkedIn? I'm on LinkedIn, I said. You should connect with Marcus. He knows lots of people in tech. Maybe he could help you find something more stable than freelance work. That's kind of you, I said diplomatically. Rachel overheard and jumped in. Oh, that's a great idea. Marcus, you should introduce Maya to some of your contacts. She's been freelancing for years now. It's probably time for something more permanent, right, Maya? Every eye in the circle turned to me, waiting for me to gratefully accept their charity. I'm pretty happy with my current situation, I said carefully. But don't you want stability? Rachel pressed. Benefits? A 401k? You're 29, Maya. Most people our age have careers by now. Rachel has a point, Mom added, having drifted back into the conversation. We worry about you, sweetie. Freelancing is so uncertain. What happens when you're older? When you want to buy a house or start a family? I'm managing fine, I said. Are you though? Dad asked with fatherly concern that felt more like doubt. Because you never talk about your work. You never share any wins or successes. It makes us wonder if things are actually going well or if you're just too proud to admit you're struggling. The circle had grown. More of Rachel's friends, Marcus's colleagues, family members, all watching this intervention disguised as concern. I'm not struggling, I said quietly. Then why are you still freelancing? Rachel asked, genuinely confused. If things were going well, wouldn't you have been hired by now? Wouldn't you have a real position somewhere? I prefer the autonomy, I said. Autonomy, Marcus repeated with a slight smile. That's one word for it. Look, Maya, no judgment, but we've all been there. That phase after college where you're trying to figure things out, taking whatever work comes your way. But there comes a time when you need to accept that maybe the dream isn't working out and pivot to something more realistic. What dream? I asked. Whatever it is you're chasing with this freelance thing. The idea that you can make a real living without a traditional career. It's a nice fantasy, but the numbers don't usually work out. Trust me, I see the data every day at Goldman. Several people nodded in agreement. Rachel looked at me with sisterly sympathy, like she was watching me finally face a difficult truth. I appreciate the concern, I said evenly. But I'm doing fine. You always say that, Rachel said with mild frustration. You always say everything is fine. But Maya, it's been 5 years since graduation. 5 years of freelancing with nothing to show for it. No promotions, no title changes, no forward momentum. Just the same vague answer every time we ask what you do. Maybe that's because you never actually ask what I do, I pointed out. You ask if I'm still freelancing, and when I say yes, the conversation ends. Because there's nothing to talk about, Dad said bluntly. Freelancing isn't a career, Maya. It's something you do between careers. Unless you're actually successful at it, I said. Are you? Marcus challenged, not unkindly. Because I think if you were really successful, you'd be more eager to share details. The fact that you're so secretive about your work suggests you're embarrassed about the reality of the situation. The logic was sound. From their perspective, I was hiding failure behind vague answers and deflection. I'm not embarrassed, I said. Then tell us, Rachel urged. Tell us about your freelance work. What are you working on? Who are your clients? How much are you making? Help us understand why you're so committed to this path. The entire party seemed to be listening now. The room had gone quiet, all attention focused on Rachel's struggling little sister who was about to either defend her choices or admit defeat. I opened my mouth to respond when someone's phone chimed loudly in the silence. Oh my God, a voice said from the back of the crowd. One of Rachel's Stanford friends, I thought her name was Jessica, was staring at her phone with her mouth open. Oh my God. What? Rachel asked, annoyed at the interruption. Jessica looked up, her face pale. She looked directly at me. You're Maya Chin? The Maya Chin. I'm Maya Chin, I confirmed cautiously. From Strategic Synthesis Consulting? My company name. The one I'd carefully never mentioned at family gatherings. Yes, I said. Jessica thrust her phone toward Rachel. Your sister is on Forbes. The 30 under 30 list. Industry leaders category. The champagne glass in Rachel's hand froze halfway to her lips. What? She said. Forbes 30 under 30, Jessica repeated, her voice rising with excitement. The list just dropped tonight. Maya Chin's Strategic Synthesis Consulting. It says she's revolutionized content strategy for Fortune 500 companies and generated over $50 million in value for her clients over the past 3 years. The silence was absolute. Marcus took Jessica's phone, read the screen, then looked at me like he was seeing a completely different person. You're listed as founder and CEO of Strategic Synthesis. The article says you've worked with Adobe, Salesforce, and Microsoft. Among others, I said calmly. Dad grabbed the phone next. His face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally something like awe. It says your consulting firm is valued at $8.2 million. Is that accurate? It's a conservative estimate, I said. We'll probably hit $12 million by year end. Mom made a sound like someone had punched her. $12 million? Your company is worth $12 million. The valuation is based on annual recurring revenue and client contracts, I explained. But yes, roughly that range. Rachel was scrolling through her own phone now, frantically pulling up the Forbes article. I could see her reading, her face growing paler with each paragraph. You worked with Microsoft, she read aloud. You developed their global content strategy that increased engagement by 340%. You consulted for Adobe on their Creative Cloud marketing approach. She looked up at me. You've been doing this the whole time? These huge companies, these massive projects, and you never said anything. You never asked, I pointed out again. We asked all the time. Dad protested. You asked if I was still freelancing, which technically I am. Strategic Synthesis is structured as a consulting firm, and I work independently with clients on a project basis. That's freelancing. You just assumed freelancing meant I was barely getting by. Marcus was scrolling now to your LinkedIn profile. Jesus Christ. You have recommendations from C-suite executives at half the Fortune 500. Your company website. How did we never find this? My company operates under a different name than my personal brand, I explained. And I keep a low profile deliberately. Most of my clients prefer confidential consulting relationships. Jennifer, the Stanford friend who'd originally asked what kind of freelance work I did, looked like she might faint. You're the Maya Chin who spoke at Stanford's business school last month. About digital strategy and brand positioning. I was there. I didn't connect. You looked so different in the photos. Professional headshots, I said simply. Rachel had found my company website. Your consulting rates start at $50,000 per project. $50,000. For a single project. That's the minimum, I confirmed. Enterprise contracts typically run $200,000 to $500,000. The math was visibly happening in everyone's heads. The number of projects I'd need to hit $3.4 million in annual revenue. The kind of clients paying those rates. The level of expertise required to command those fees. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked, and her voice cracked. All these years we thought you were struggling. We worried about you. And you were running a multi-million-dollar company. Would you have believed me if I'd told you 3 years ago? I asked. When I was just starting to build the client base. When you all assumed freelancing meant failure. Silence. Because we all knew the answer. You let us think you were barely getting by, Dad said slowly. You lived in that small apartment, drove that old car, dressed simply. You let us pity you. I didn't let you do anything, I corrected. You made assumptions based on your definition of success. I just didn't bother correcting them because your opinion of my career choices stopped mattering around year 2. The words landed hard. Rachel actually flinched. That's not fair, she said quietly. Isn't it? I looked around at all of them. How many times did you introduce me as your unemployed sister, or the freelancer? How many family gatherings ended with someone suggesting I get a real job, or offering to connect me with entry-level positions? You didn't see me as successful because I didn't fit your narrow definition of what success looks like. Marcus's father cleared his throat. To be fair, you were rather secretive about your work. You never shared details or achievements. That naturally led to assumptions. I shared what I was willing to share with people who had already judged me, I said. Every time I mentioned a project or a client, it was met with skepticism or condescension. So I stopped sharing. I focused on building something real instead of defending myself to people who weren't actually interested in understanding my work. We were interested, Mom protested weakly. You were interested in me fitting into your expectations, I corrected gently. There's a difference. Rachel's phone buzzed. Then Marcus's. Then several others around the room. They all looked at their screens with varying expressions of shock. It's trending, Jessica said. The Forbes 30 under 30 announcement. Maya's profile is getting shared everywhere. Tech Twitter is exploding. Marcus was reading something on his phone, his expression growing more uncomfortable by the second. Someone from my firm just texted me. They want to know if I can introduce them to you. They're interested in hiring strategic synthesis for a major consulting project. I'm booked through next year, I said. But tell them to contact my team through the website. We can discuss 2026 availability. The casual way I said 2026 availability seemed to drive home just how successful I actually was. This wasn't a struggling freelancer grateful for any project. This was a highly sought-after consultant with a waiting list. Dad was still staring at his phone. There's a profile of you in TechCrunch from 6 months ago. The content strategist who doesn't chase followers but commands respect. Why didn't I ever see this? Because you never looked, I said simply. You assumed you knew my story, so you never bothered to research what I was actually building. Rachel set down her champagne glass carefully, like she was afraid she might drop it. I introduced you as unemployed tonight. To everyone here. I told them you were just doing freelance work, and I said it like... She couldn't finish the sentence. Like it was something to be embarrassed about, I finished for her. Yes, I noticed. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't ask. You could have told me. I could have, I agreed. But somewhere around the third or fourth time you introduced me as your struggling sister, I realized you weren't interested in my actual life. You were interested in maintaining a particular narrative where you were the successful daughter and I was the cautionary tale. The truth of that statement hung in the air. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. That's not. I didn't. She looked around at her friends, her fiancé, our parents. Everyone was watching her. I was trying to help. We all were. You were trying to fix something that wasn't broken, I said. You saw freelancing and assumed failure because it didn't match your definition of success. But I've been successful by my own metrics this whole time. I built something meaningful, worked with incredible companies, and maintained the autonomy I value. The fact that it didn't come with a traditional job title or office building didn't make it less real. Marcus stepped forward, looking genuinely apologetic. I owe you an apology. Everything I said earlier about freelancing being a phase, about pivoting to something realistic, I was completely wrong. And condescending. I'm sorry. Apology accepted, I said. Can I ask you something? He glanced at Rachel. Why did you keep it secret? Really? I considered the question carefully. Because I learned something important early on. The people who truly respect you don't need external validation to believe in you. They don't need Forbes to tell them you're successful. They trust your judgment and support your choices even when they don't fully understand them. And the people who do need that external validation, they're not really supporting you. They're supporting the idea of success they can understand and quantify. That's what you think of us? Mom asked, hurt evident in her voice. That we only value you now because Forbes validated you? Don't you? I asked gently. 20 minutes ago, you were all concerned about my lack of stability and suggesting I needed Marcus's help to find a real job. Now you're all looking at me differently. The only thing that changed was external validation. I'm the same person doing the same work I've been doing for 5 years. But now it counts because Forbes said so. The accuracy of that observation was written on every face. Dad cleared his throat. You're right. You're absolutely right, and I hate that you're right. We should have trusted you. Believed in you. Asked more questions and made fewer assumptions. Yes, I agreed simply. Can you forgive us? Rachel asked, tears now streaming down her face. I've been a terrible sister. Dismissive and condescending, and so focused on my own achievements that I completely missed yours. I'm so sorry. I looked at her. My sister who'd been so proud of her Stanford degree, her consulting job, her wealthy fiancé. She'd built a life that looked successful by conventional measures. and she genuinely believed she was further ahead than me. "I forgive you," I said. "But Rachel, you need to understand something. This isn't just about tonight or this party. This is about 5 years of you treating my choices like mistakes. 5 years of introductions that made me sound like a failure. 5 years of unsolicited advice from people who never bothered to understand what I was actually building." "I know," she whispered. "I know, and I hate myself for it." "Don't hate yourself," I said more gently. "Just learn from it. Learn that success comes in different forms. That someone can be doing exceptionally well even if their path doesn't match your expectations. That maybe you should ask questions before making judgments." Jessica suddenly spoke up. "For what it's worth, I follow your work. I've read several of your articles in Harvard Business Review and Fast Company. I just never made the connection because you don't use photos on your bylines, and your personal social media presence is minimal. I prefer to let the work speak for itself," I said. "Well, the work is incredible," Jessica said earnestly. "Your framework for authentic brand storytelling changed how I think about marketing strategy. I used your methodology to rebuild our entire content approach at my startup." "I'm glad it helped," I said sincerely. Marcus's phone buzzed again. "My managing director just texted. He's asking if we can arrange a meeting with you. He says Goldman has been trying to get on your client roster for 2 years. We're in preliminary discussions," I confirmed. "Nothing finalized yet." The casual way I mentioned Goldman Sachs, Marcus's own firm, pursuing my services seemed to complete the reversal of our earlier dynamic. He'd been offering to help me find work. His own employer had been chasing me for 2 years. "This is surreal," Rachel said, half laughing through her tears. 2 hours ago I was introducing you as my unemployed sister. Now you're on Forbes and Goldman Sachs is trying to hire you." "The situation hasn't changed," I pointed out. "Only your perception of it. That's what makes it surreal. We were so wrong about everything." Mom had been quietly crying and now she approached me carefully. "Can you forgive me too? I've been so worried about you, but I realize now that worry was based on my own limited understanding of what your life could be. I should have trusted that you knew what you were doing." "I forgive you, Mom," I said. "But I need you to understand that this isn't a happy ending where everything is suddenly fine. You spent 5 years doubting me. That hurt. And it's going to take time for me to trust that you actually respect my choices rather than just being impressed by Forbes' validation." "That's fair," she said. "More than fair." Dad stepped forward. "What can we do? How do we make this right?" "Start by actually asking about my work," I said. "Not, are you still freelancing, but genuine curiosity about what I'm doing, who I'm working with, what challenges I'm facing. Treat me like the expert I've become rather than the struggling graduate you're worried about." "We can do that," he promised. "And stop assuming that unconventional paths are failures." I added, "Just because someone's career doesn't look like yours doesn't mean it's not working." The party had fully stopped now. Everyone was clustered around listening to this unexpected drama. Rachel's engagement celebration had become my impromptu coming-out party as a successful entrepreneur. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Why didn't you ever correct us? Even once?" "Because I learned that some lessons people need to learn on their own," I said. "If I'd told you 3 years ago that I was building a successful consulting firm, you would have smiled politely and still worried behind my back. You needed to be wrong so you could understand the cost of your assumptions." "That's harsh," he said. "But effective," I countered. "Right now, every single person in this room is reconsidering their assumptions about success, career paths, and unconventional choices. That wouldn't have happened if I'd just told you about my achievements. You had to be confronted with your own prejudices to actually change your thinking." Rachel laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "So you've been conducting a long-term experiment in family dynamics? Using us to prove a point?" "I've been living my life while letting you draw your own conclusions," I said. "There's a difference." My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner. "Forbes announcement is blowing up. Website traffic is up 4,000%. Should I start filtering the new client inquiries?" I typed back, "Filter for Fortune 100 only. Everyone else goes on the waiting list." I looked up to find everyone watching me. "Work?" Dad asked. "Client inquiries," I confirmed. "The Forbes announcement tends to generate a lot of interest." I bet, Marcus said. Can I ask what your typical project scope looks like? I'm genuinely curious now. So I told him. I explained how strategic synthesis worked with companies to completely rebuild their content strategy from the ground up. How we use data analytics combined with psychological frameworks to create authentic brand narratives. How a typical engagement lasted 6 to 9 months and involved working directly with C-suite executives. And as I talked, I watched their faces change. They were finally seeing me, not their assumptions about me but the actual person I'd become. This is incredible, Jennifer said when I finished. You're doing exactly what I want to be doing in 5 years. Then don't let anyone tell you freelancing isn't a real career, I said. If you're good at what you do and you provide genuine value, the path doesn't matter. Rachel wiped her eyes and managed a genuine smile. I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm incredibly proud of what you've built. Thank you, I said. Does this change anything? She asked quietly. Between us? I considered the question. I don't know yet. I need time to process tonight, and years of feeling dismissed don't disappear because of one Forbes announcement. But I'm willing to try rebuilding our relationship on more honest terms. I'd like that, she said. And I promise, no more introducing you as the unemployed sister. How about just introducing me as Maya? I suggested. No qualifiers about my career or success. Just your sister. Just my sister, she repeated. I can do that. The party gradually resumed, but everything had shifted. People approached me with genuine interest now, asking thoughtful questions about my work instead of offering condescending advice. Marcus's colleagues wanted to discuss consulting strategies. Rachel's friends asked about entrepreneurship and building a business. And through it all, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication because I'd been right to trust my own path. Sadness because it had taken Forbes to make my own family see me clearly. Around midnight, as the party wound down, Rachel found me on the balcony. Thank you for coming tonight, she said. Even though we made it incredibly uncomfortable. You didn't know, I said. But I should have asked. She leaned against the railing beside me. Can I ask you something now? Honestly. Sure. Are you happy? With your work, your life, all of it? I thought about my answer carefully. Yes. I love what I do. I work with fascinating companies on complex problems. I have the autonomy to choose my projects and clients. I make enough money to live comfortably and save for the future. And I built it all myself without compromise. So yes, I'm happy. I'm glad, she said. Really glad. And I'm sorry it took Forbes for me to see it. Me too, I admitted. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we both needed tonight to understand each other better. She smiled. Look at us. Having an actual honest conversation. We should try it more often. Deal, she said. Starting now. Tell me about your work. Really tell me. I want to understand what you've built. So I did. For the first time in 5 years, I told my sister about strategic synthesis, about my clients and projects and challenges. About the methodology I'd developed and the impact I'd had. About the life I'd built that looked nothing like hers but was just as valid. And she listened. Really listened. Without judgment or condescension or concern. Just my sister finally seeing me clearly. When I drove home that night, my phone was full of messages. From clients, colleagues, former classmates who'd seen the Forbes announcement. But the one that mattered most was from Rachel. Thank you for teaching me to ask questions instead of making assumptions. I love you and I'm proud of you. Always was, even if I didn't know it. I smiled and put the phone away. 5 years of doubt, erased by one Forbes article. It wasn't the ending I'd expected. But it was the ending I'd earned.